This is Sarah, and I just want to take a moment to speak to you about this week's sponsor, Favor. Favor Inc. is a statewide family-led nonprofit 501c3 organization that is committed to empowering families as advocates and partners in improving educational and health outcomes for our children. Favor is the Connecticut state organization of the Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health. Favor offers a single place for families with children who have medical, mental, emotional, and behavioral health challenges to find information, assistance, and training. To find out more about Favor, please go to favor-ct.org. We are grateful for our opportunity to work with Favor as a sponsor, and now on to the rest of the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Chronicles. My name is Sarah, and today I'm here with Renee Schyjer. She is the caregiver and wife of Freddy Moore. Hi, Renee. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Sarah?
I'm great. Thank you so much. Genuinely, thank you so much for being here. Your husband, Freddy, is the author of the book, It's Not a Rumour, and I have been reading it. It is a rock and roll journey through life and Alzheimer's. So Alzheimer's is a very personal topic for me, as most of my audience knows. My grandmother suffered from Alzheimer's. My grandfather had dementia. And I've worked caregiving for Alzheimer's in a professional setting for many, many years. And rock and roll is what fuels my family. So thank you for being here again.
Thank you for having me. I think this is wonderful.
Thank you. Would you like to tell my audience a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I think a lot of me has to do with Freddie because we've been together for a long time and we're just soulmates and just really happy. We were really happy until he got the diagnosis, and I was kind of in denial for a long time about it, and I kind of just said, "Oh, I'm going to fix him. I'm going to fix him. Yeah, I don't. No matter that there's no cure, I'm going to fix him." And I tried everything I could because he has such a beautiful brain. I wanted to preserve it as much as possible. So part of what is about me, I am a caregiver at heart. I always have been. I took care of my parents. I seem to be the glue that holds my family together. And I took care of Freddie. And I don't have children because I was so busy taking care of everybody else. I didn't want to take care of any children anyway, but, and it's fine with me. So, and what I'm about is I wanted to get Freddie's story out, not just about him, but to make people more aware of Alzheimer's and what it does to people and what it does to the caregiver involved and how hard it is to deal with. And so that's kind of my goal right now. It's to preserve Freddie's legacy, but it's also to make people more aware of Alzheimer's and caregiving and dealing with something where someone is sick in your family or someone's going through something and you have to deal with it and you just have to step up and figure it out.
Yes. That's true. There's not a lot, there is awareness of Alzheimer's, but there's not a lot of understanding. You don't realize how brutal it is until you live with someone or you care for somebody who gets this disease. And early onset Alzheimer's tends to be a little, just a little harder, I think, because it's younger than we expect. There's mobility things, and there's just a lot of different things with early onset Alzheimer's that present more challenges throughout the years. But before we get into all that, I'd like you to talk a little bit about Freddie's music career.
Okay. Well, Freddie was an amazing person. So the Beatles were a big influence on him. And I mean, it's so funny. I don't know if you're old enough to have watched that show In Living Color, but you remember that show In Living Color? Okay, well, there was a show called In Living Color. And what they would do is this guy on the show would say, "Oh, this is reminding me of something. Wrote a song about it. Like to hear it? Here it go." Well, Freddie, he used to talk like that. He would have these experiences or feelings, and he would write a song about it. And he would watch the Beatles, and then he would say, "I could do that. I could write a song like that," And he did, and he became a songwriter when he was really young, like 13 or 14, and he was just in his little basement room. And this guy was walking by and said, "Hey, did you write that song?" And he said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, do you want to join my band?" And Freddie said, No, but you could join mine. And he didn't even have a band, but he had that drive in him to be a songwriter. And so he had so many different careers. And he's written probably maybe 500 songs. And so he had multi versions of his bands. He started a small band when he was really young and then progressed and progressed. And he had a lot of success in his music. He had a lot of influences like Frank Zappa and the Beatles and just a lot of different influences. And he went to the University of Minnesota and studied music theory. So he was the arranger and songwriter, and he played a ton of instruments and taught himself. And so he had a lot of success in Minnesota, where he's from, and they toured the Midwest, and they had a big band there. And then after a while, they decided, you know what, we really need to go to LA to really try to make it. And so they came out to LA and had some success with bands here. Well, with two bands here, actually three. But they were headlining in some of the biggest clubs here in LA. And you know, the Police were opening for them. The Motels were opening for them. Oingo Boingo. You know, so all these bands. So it was really cool, but the problem is he wouldn't give up the rights to his songs, so he never got that record deal. He would have made it, but he just never would sign over all the rights. So
Yeah. And he did go on to do computer programming, correct?
correct.
As like his professional career.
Correct.
But you know, that's I've listened to some of his songs, and I personally like them. And I've read songs in the book. Some of them have made me laugh. I've seen the Beatles influence and the Frank Zappa influence. Growing up raised by hippies, I'm familiar with a lot of this music. Classic rock was just what I grew up with. Granted, I also grew up in like the 90s and had, you know, 90s alternative and grunge and new metal and got to see all that fun stuff
Right.
come about as well. So, and like I said, music is a driving force in my life personally. My kids love music. It's just, I think, and I don't think I've met anybody who doesn't like music.
You know, I find music to be such a good therapy for people with Alzheimer's, sometimes with autism, sometimes, you know, with all different kinds of things. And it helped him. It helped him a lot. I mean, even now they play music where he's at, and he always listens, you know, and he always likes to hear it. You
That's
know,
awesome.
even his own songs. I go over there and I play his, you know, I'll play his songs for him, and he's like, that's good. You know. He also really loved to play the guitar and play, you know, sing, and he was like a what was cool about him is he was incredibly shy. So as a person, he was incredibly shy, but he would create these alter egos to be the front man of the band. So I used to say he was like Clark Kent and Superman because on stage he was wild and crazy, but in real life he was just, you know, mild-mannered Midwesterner.
And from reading the book, I noticed like he's very, you know, he's just like a very intelligent man as well. Reading the book and just listening, like reading his songs and poems and hearing his stories. It's just, I highly recommend this book to anybody who is caring for someone with Alzheimer's or loves music. I think everybody should read this book. I think everybody should know Freddie's music.
Thank you.
But again, that's just me personally. So I want you to talk about, if it's okay, to talk a little bit more about the first signs you noticed with early onset Alzheimer's.
Okay. Freddie was really, really brilliant. I mean, one of his whole things, his whole life, is he had to research everything. You know, he would get into something and then he would go deep into research, buy every book on it, and study it, and just really absorb it. So he was incredibly smart. And he was also, he loved maps, and he felt like he could see the city from up above, the way he knew where it was all mapped out. Well, the way I noticed that he was starting to get something was wrong, or that I noticed something was wrong, was he would get lost. And he used to know every inch of this city and every alley and every back road and everything. And then he was starting to get lost and not knowing where he parked the car or where, and he also, I felt like he had an eidetic memory. He could remember so many things. And all of a sudden it was like he forgot where the car was parked. He would leave his keys in the door and then say, I lost my keys, but they were in the door. He left the burners on the stove, just leaving things on. And or he would, he would just be forgetful. And it was really strange. And I noticed that early on. And I was like, wait a minute, you know everything. And, he taught me so much. And so the fact that he was forgetting where he parked or how to get somewhere was a real sign for me to know that something was wrong. And I made him go for an MRI.
Yeah. Did you notice changes in behaviors as well, or just the forgetfulness?
At first it was the forgetfulness, and then also he kept writing notes to himself all the time and leaving Post-its everywhere to remind him. I would have to remind him to do things, which I never used to have to do. And it was mostly that and just forgetting, like he was starting to tell his stories. He was posting on Facebook, like he was just posting his stories on Facebook, and he was starting to forget some things. And he would ask me, do you remember, this guy or that and this and that? And I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. So, but that's how I started to notice it. Although on the first MRI that he had back in 2010, they didn't see anything. They didn't see Alzheimer's. And it was probably too early to see the plaque or anything, any kind of problem going on. So, yeah, we didn't see it then. But as time went on, I kept seeing more and more and more. And it was just devastating to realize it,
Now, how old was Freddie when he was diagnosed?
He was actually diagnosed at 64. But I want to tell you, I think he had it since he was 60, or possibly even a little earlier, because his jobs started noticing he wasn't as sharp, as quick as he was before. And yeah, so he got laid off in 2010, and it just wasn't, things weren't working. He ended up retiring early at 62 because he couldn't really work anymore. He used to take classes all the time too, and wasn't able to keep up. So yeah, I think the official diagnosis wasn't until 2014, but it was probably earlier than that.
Thank you for sharing that, because a lot of times those things get chalked up to just age. Oh, this person's older, and that's why.
Just can't remember that word or something.
Yep.
Yes.
And unfortunately, a major change in forgetfulness like that is a sign that something is wrong and it's time to go to the doctor. I know that I hear all the time, oh, well, I'm just getting old, so I'm starting to forget things, or old people just forget things, that's normal. And it's actually not a normal part of aging. And I just want to clarify that. And 60 really isn't old today.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
When I was a kid, 60 was old. Like the Golden Girls, they were all in their 50s or 60s. 50 and 60 today is not really old.
Right.
It's still just the middle. So thank you for sharing that. And I just want to clarify something. And I know I read this in the book, and I just want to be clear for the audience because I feel like this is an important thing to point out. Freddie was not into drugs, drinking, alcohol. He didn't make lifestyle choices that would really affect him to get alcohol-induced or drug-induced dementia. I just want to point out that it was most likely hereditary. Do you believe that?
I know that for a fact. He didn't drink. He never did drugs, ever. I think he's never done any drugs. And he loved his brain. That's what's so ironic about this disease for him, because he didn't like to be altered. He liked who he was. And what he used to say was, I'm high on life. I don't need to be on anything, And he would say the same things to me. And I didn't do a lot of stuff either because of him, And he does have the genetic, I had him genetically tested. And I checked for heavy metals. We checked everything. And he has 2 copies of the Alzheimer's gene in his chromosomes. So he has it from his mother's side and his father's side. So that is definitely what happened to him. The one thing I will tell you that I learned, which was very interesting for me to learn on doing all this research about Alzheimer's and going through this process, is he did develop type 2 diabetes. And people with type 2 diabetes have a 50% chance of getting Alzheimer's due to insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is when your body does not it burns sugar instead of fat. And so that's why people get heavy when they get type 2 diabetes, because they're not burning fat, they're burning sugar, and their body uses up the sugar, and then their glucose is starving their brain. So that I found very interesting. He did develop type 2 diabetes, and I think that contributed to him getting the Alzheimer's, because we went into way heavy research in the Alzheimer's, and he did have the insulin resistance, and that contributed to also the genetic aspect of his disease.
Yeah. Like I said before, there are lifestyle factors that do affect Alzheimer's. And, drinking, drugs, alcohol, even diet can affect that. Exercise, in, brain activities, what you're doing to keep your brain active, your body active, all that stuff can be contributing factors. But here it looks like it's less of a factor than genetics, but like you mentioned, the diabetes. So maybe, I don't want to be critical. I hope I'm not being critical saying
No.
I don't want to sound that way. I just want to point out, I just want to be clear, because unfortunately, I have seen alcohol-induced dementia, and it's very sad. It's very sad to see as well. And, there's so many layers. There's 60, I think there's like 65 different types of dementia or something like that. I could be wrong. Mm-hmm. And, they can be fueled by so many things. They can be vascular dementia, your cardiac health can impact dementia. Yes. So it's just something to be mindful of when you notice changes in a loved one. It doesn't necessarily mean Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's and dementia are not necessarily the same.
You're right.
So I just want to clarify that for my audience, just in case they're coming on later. Although we have talked about that a lot on the show. So I know you guys did a really important and special performance for Freddy's neurologist. Would you like to talk about that a little bit and why
that was my idea, because we would go to the appointment with the neurologist. We went every 2 months or every 3 months, and I just felt like, he wasn't doing great on the mini mental state exam, and he wasn't, I felt that the neurologist was not getting the essence of who he was. And the essence of who he is partially Freddy Moore. And when he's got a guitar and he plays his songs, he lights up, and you can see the joy and the real spirit of him. So I said, I would like to come to the neurologist's office with our guitars and with the music stand and everything. And I would like us to play 3 songs just so that you can see what he is. I wanted him to see the real Freddy Moore. I wanted him to see that, because people who only know him with this Alzheimer's, they don't know what a special guy he really was. So we went to the neurologist's office, and there were a bunch of staff standing there with their phones, and we played 3 songs, and I was nervous as hell because I am not a performer, but I tried my best, and we actually did that a couple of times because Dr. Amos, our neurologist, saw what I was trying to get across, and it was great. It was great, and he loved it. He felt so good after, and you could totally see the joy in him. And I just wanted him to see that, and I wanted everyone in that office to know that he's not just this disease. There's so much more to him.
Yes, exactly. And unfortunately, healthcare professionals don't have the opportunity to know the person before the disease. I know working in Alzheimer's care, working in assisted living for years, I would have, people that I would care for, residents who had done amazing things in their lives. And I had no idea because we were never really told their backstory. And even if we were told their backstory, we didn't hear all the details. I had one resident who was she basically founded and started special education in the state of Rhode Island. It didn't
Wow.
exist, and she started it, and that was somebody that I was taking care of. And when she told me that that was her job, I just looked at her and I said, do you know how important your work has impacted my family? So it's just amazing. And to everyone else, she was just this grumpy old lady with Alzheimer's, which sounds awful, but it's sad that when you don't. That's why it's so important to get to know the person on a deeper level than just their name and their diagnosis, and their basic care needs. It's so important to get to know somebody on like a more emotional level. And I believe that that's part of the whole in holistic care, is really getting to know your client and your person you're caring for. As caregivers, we have that opportunity, but outside caregivers just unfortunately do not. So I love that you did that. I think that that's amazing. And that's something that I will be sharing with family and friends to make sure that you remind everybody who cares for your loved one who they were before. What was the inspiration for the book It's Not a Rumor?
Okay, so one of the things I was thinking when he was first diagnosed, he started talking and telling his stories, and he wanted his stories told. And I said, you know what, we got to get these stories down. And I bought a book on how to write a memoir, and I couldn't do it. So I called the LA Writers Group and that we have here. And I asked if they had like a co-writer that could come and sit down and basically interview him to get out all the stories so we could preserve his stories before he lost them. I also had the idea that I wanted to name each of the chapters one of his song names, because I thought that would be cool, since all of his songs were about some time going through his life that were part of his journey and part of his story. And so he was very poetic with the way he would tell his stories. And so anyway, so we interviewed a bunch of writers, and then we found Shannon Guyton, who was just clicked with him. They just are kindred spirits. And she came over and started sitting with him and talking and telling the stories. What was interesting to me was as she was going through this process, he was getting better in a way because he was having to remember. Of course, there were good days and bad, but there were things that were helping him when he was writing the book. So it was a long process. It took years, but I really feel that it was worth it. And I think he would be super proud of the book that we've created, because it's his true story. It's his stories that he wanted to preserve. And he used to read tons of music biographies, and he would be like, oh my God, this would be so cool if I had a book like this, like the ones I read. And that's what we did. So it took a long time to get it published. Thank God he had a fan who's in publishing and he owns Rare Bird Books. And he asked if he could publish the book. And so we sent him the manuscript and we got it published. So I really think Freddie would be proud of it.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want it to be a chronological story. Like I was born, I lived, and then this happened to me. He wanted it to jump around in time. And that's what it does. But it's really cool. And I think he would like it. As we were going through the whole process, he would get very emotional. As we would read the chapters, he would get very emotional and start crying, and I would start crying. But it was a good thing that we were getting these stories down. And I don't know. I think it's really cool.
I agree. Like I said, I highly recommend this book, and I just want to mention really quick that the book, at the very back of the book, but at the back, towards the back, it says the biggest thing in my life is I got to be in love with Renee. And that just like hit me. Like, that's the sweetest thing. Like, this is yours and his legacy. And it's a great book. And I'm just
Thank you.
really honored.
He is my soulmate. I mean, we were so in touch, in tune with. We didn't need anybody else. Nobody, just us. And we were happy for 35 years. I mean, he's really my only boyfriend, my only anything. I fought hard to keep him. But we just loved each other so much, and it's really, we had an amazing connection.
Yeah,
And it's
and
just,
that comes through.
yes.
That really does come through in the book, that love, and it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
So I want to ask about writing the memoir. It's kind of a two-part question. So were there challenges in writing this memoir, and did it help track the progression of the disease?
Definitely. Both questions, yes. We started writing the memoir in, I think, 2014. I think it was towards the end of 2014, I think. And Shannon would come and sit with him, and we went through 2014, 2015. At the beginning of 2016, he had a brain bleed, and it's basically a stroke. And after that, he could not talk anymore about, not talk just in general, but he couldn't remember the stories. He couldn't call up those memories anymore. So she basically had to finish the book on her own, or with me filling in the rest. And she interviewed everyone in his life to try to shore up everything she had. She had a lot, because it's a lot of material. I mean, there's so many different aspects of his life, but it definitely tracked the progression, and it definitely shows the decline, and how we had to finish this book by ourselves, me and Shannon, because he could no longer help us.
Yeah. The ending of the book is the part I'm not really looking forward to reading, because I know it's going to break my heart.
It does. It does.
I know, I could just sense it, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. It's going to be worth the heartbreak, the joy, and the love, and the humor. There's such a humor to him that's so, it's like a realistic humor. Like it's like he finds humor in things that most people wouldn't find funny, that they would find sad.
You know what Shannon used to say? She said, he reminds me of Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Because he was kind of a wimp, but it was so cute. You know? And he did have a lot of funny stories. He was very funny and witty, and, just stuff happened to him, almost like Forrest Gump. You would think, what the hell? So it was very cool.
And it takes place through that time frame too, as well. So it's interesting.
It is.
It really is. I highly recommend this book.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
So my next question is, while you're caregiving for him, like actively caregiving in the home, what were your self-care techniques? What did you do for you?
Well, at first I didn't do a lot. I got really skinny. I wasn't eating. I would maybe eat a bowl of cereal once in a while, and your whole life becomes taking care of that person, and it's hard. And I think the only things I used to do, first of all, I did go to work. So work was actually a good distraction for me, because then I wasn't worrying in those moments. And, distraction was always a good thing. But for me, that's the only way I cope. And I did cry a lot, and I still do. But for me, the best support that I've had is my family. My family and my friends are amazing. I have 3 sisters. Thank God for them. And they have been a huge support to me. And I have great friends. And support group. Support group has been very good for me. I feel like they give me the permission to not feel guilty once in a while. I feel like that, and going through this experience and talking to other people who go through the same thing, that was a lot for me, helping me with my self-care. And a lot of people I called the Alzheimer's Association many times, crying and just, they have a hotline, and I got really dark sometimes and sad, and but I kept thinking I have to stay strong for him. I have to take care of him, and I have to just do whatever it takes, no matter what.
Yeah. And that's a trap that a lot of caregivers fall into is the I can't do anything for me because I have to take care of them all the time. And I'm a huge self-care advocate. I know the dark places we go when we're not taking care of ourselves. I know the whole life mask or air mask analogy when you're on a plane, and the whole you can't pour from an empty cup. And I know that these are
Right.
all cliche and they're hard to think of in the moment, but they really are so true. I can't feed someone else if I'm starving. I can't function if I'm not getting enough sleep. And so, I understand all of that. Would you like to talk about how Freddie's doing now, or do you not want to share that?
Sure, we could talk about it. He he is not talking a lot. He's not eating that much. He's had a few falls lately, and they tell me that he's gonna keep experiencing that because he's not as sure-footed as he was, and it's difficult. It's difficult to watch. I always feel that the care place that I have him at is not taking as good a care of him as I would, even though I know it's one of the best places for him. And everyone there has Alzheimer's or dementia of some kind. And I know they're doing the best they can. And it's just scary because we're kind of in late stage now. And I don't think we realize it. I don't realize it. That's what it is. I go and see him. It's sad and it's heartbreaking to me. And it's kind of like reliving that loss over and over and over. That's the hardest part. This long goodbye, this um, limbo that we're in. And I know I'm going to freak out when the time comes where he's not with us anymore. And I don't know how long that is. That's another thing. I'm a control freak. I want to know everything. I want to know, I want to plan. I want to know. I want to be, whatever. And I can't prepare for this. This is nothing I can prepare for. This is nothing I can be in control of. So that's the hardest part for me. And he's okay. They say he's happy as much as he can be. I don't think he's suffering. I mean, I think he's not in any pain, and that I know of. I don't think. And he's just, to me, he seems like he's in an alternate dimension, you know. And so I don't know.
Yeah.
But he does still remember me, in that I know there's emotional memory, because when I'm there and I'm telling him I love him and I'm smiling at him, I take my mask down and I show him my face. He smiles and he gets kind of like shy and stuff. So I think he knows me.
Yeah. I think a lot of times our loved ones, even if they don't know, they know who we are. They know, I had a woman in the nursing home who had a daughter that she did not get along with. And even though she had no idea what was going on all the time, as soon as her daughter would walk around the corner, she would just sit in the chair and stare. And the daughter would be like, my brother says she's up walking around and all this stuff. And we were baffled at first. We were thinking she'd had a stroke. We'd sent her to the hospital, did all kinds of vitals on her. Come to find out, she just didn't want to deal with her daughter. And no, that sounds awful. But she would just sit down and pretend like she couldn't walk, even when her daughter was there.
Wow.
And we noticed it was only when her daughter was there. So, and even with my grandmother, we had a moment of, I mentioned my oldest son, and I go, yeah, he loves you. And she goes, I love him too, very much so. And it was like the last clear thing she had ever said to me. And so, you just know that they do know who you are, even if they don't remember everything
Right.
about you
Right.
or who exactly you are. They do know that you are someone that they care about.
Right.
I really believe that wholeheartedly. Just from my experiences personally and professionally in all the aspects. So
I agree. I agree.
I hope
Even
you
when
find
I'm there, he's by himself a lot of the time, but he'll hold my hand the whole time that I'm with him. He'll just, he kisses me, and he knows, he knows me. He does. Deep inside, he knows me.
that's wonderful. Find comfort in that.
I am. I do. I mean, thank God for that. I don't want him to ever forget me, just because I'll never forget him.
Yeah. And that's great because our memories are our memories and they're so important to us. And that's, your memories are going to live on through this book and his memories are going to live on through this book. And that's, just amazing and beautiful. Is there anything else you'd like to share with my audience?
I think, well, first of all, I love his songs. So if they want to check out any of his songs, you can listen to them. I don't know if all of them are working, but he had a music publishing website, and it's called demophonic.com. And it's just like demophonic.com. And there's his whole song catalog there. And you can just listen, click and listen. There's also, he's on, I think on iTunes, and on Spotify and a couple of the other sites. And if you just search the Cats or the New Cats, my favorite version of iteration of his bands is the Cats. And you can also find all these resources at itsnotarumor.com. And Rumour is spelled the poetic way, the British way, Rumour. So it's hard to find a little bit, but it's notarumor.com. And my blog is there, and all the connection, you can click on links to hear the music and see what's happening and stuff with the book. He's also on Instagram and Facebook we have for It's Not a Rumor. But I think it's just an interesting story to share. I would love to hear other people's stories. If they want to share with me about their journey, even just about caregiving or Alzheimer's. It doesn't have to be just Alzheimer's, but I mean, I think people have such interesting lives, and it's amazing to me that we can withstand this great heartache. And I would your story was amazing to me, and just the fact that your son liked his songs, and I just feel a connection to you because of that, so I think all of that is really good and positive, and I feel like we're going to help people by sharing with each other.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I have this platform, to share caregiver stories, to share my stories, because even though most of my life revolves around caring for kids with autism, there are overlaps with all caregivers. All caregivers feel isolation. All caregivers experience burnout. All caregivers get overwhelmed. All caregivers need self-care. There's so many overlaps and things like that. And real quick, do you have a favorite song by Freddy?
I do. It's called Street Life, and it's really cool.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. I'll have to check it out. I'm not sure that I've heard that one. I've heard the ones on your website. I was playing them, researching you before. I was like, yep, this is someone I want. And my son was dancing around, and he's just such a little music bug. He'll dance to anything and everything.
That's great.
So, like I said, music is a driving force in my life. It's a passion. It's an inspiration. I'm even taking a sound healing class. While it's not traditional rock and roll music, it's sound healing.
That's amazing.
Hopefully it's something that I can use to help myself, help my children, help friends, family, with my little Tibetan singing bowl.
I like it.
Thank you. Honestly, though, it was it was more than a pleasure. It was an honor talking to you. Thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. I love you already. I feel like I wish I could get your number. We could text.
After the wrap up, we will.
Okay.
So again, thank you so much for coming on, and that will wrap up this week's episode of Caregiver Chronicles. You can email us at caregiverchroniclespod@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Caregiver Chronicles 2, Instagram, Caregiver Chronicles 2, and Twitter, Caregiver Chron 1. If you have any questions, concerns, feedback about this episode, Renee's website will be in our links, and definitely check out Freddy's music, and again, read this book. And I'll see you next week.